You think money is the root of evil because somebody told you that to make you feel safer about being broke. But here is the real problem nobody teaches you. The rich do not hate money. They hate losing control. And in 2026, control is the only currency that matters. Let's be clear, this is not financial advice. This is financial education. If you want a clean story where morality and fairness decide outcomes, stop now. The world you are living in runs on incentives, not ethics, and the incentives were engineered long before you were born. You came here because you are tired. You are tired of hearing that hard work wins while the job market shrinks under the weight of AI. You are tired of watching housing detach from wages in the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia. Everywhere, rich capital can buy scarcity and call it the market. You are tired of inflation landing on your groceries and your rent, then going quiet on paper while your purchasing power stays wounded. You are tired of the stock market hitting highs like nothing is wrong while your own life feels like survival mode. And you are also tired of the story that money cannot buy what matters: love, health, happiness, meaning. That story sounds comforting. It sounds like a shield, but it is usually a shield for people who were never allowed to get near the real levers. In this video, I am going to walk you through the dark truth behind that comfort. We will talk about why fairness is not the same thing as opportunity. We will talk about how time becomes a tax on the poor and a cheat code for the rich. We will talk about ethics being treated like a luxury product. And we will talk about the blunt reality that markets have failures, but also failures of morality that money simply exposes. By the end, you will understand something uncomfortable. Money is not automatically evil, but the way society handles money can absolutely turn people into something less human. So keep listening, because the next part will feel like someone finally opened a locked door in your head. The first lie starts with a word you have been taught to worship: fairness. People hear fair and they picture a line, a queue, a waiting room. Everyone gets the same chance as long as they arrive on time. That is how a lot of people are trained to think. If you arrived earlier, you should get served earlier. If you pay nothing extra, you should not be bypassed. It feels moral because it looks equal. But the world is not equal. The world is a pricing machine. Here is the simplest test. Imagine two scenarios. In the first scenario, you stand in a line to get general admission to something basic. In the second scenario, you want to fly. Suddenly, the queue disappears into hallways and priority lanes. Now fairness is replaced by fair class. You can still say the same story in your head. You can still pretend it is about order. But the order is now determined by your willingness to pay. What happens next is predictable. The people with money buy time. The people without money pay with time. And over years, time becomes a compounding advantage. You already know how this feels in your own life. You know what it means to wait. You know what it means to take a half day off work because an appointment has a narrow window. You know what it means when a landlord's process is just a delay tactic that keeps you anxious. You know what it means to spend hours searching for a deal, only to realize deals are everywhere for people who already have options. But here is the part nobody wants to say out loud. Fairness is not a fixed law of physics. Fairness is a personal experience. It depends on where you stand. If you are retired, waiting is not a sacrifice. Waiting is part of life you can afford. Waiting becomes a hobby. If you are wealthy, waiting is still not a sacrifice because you can pay someone to handle it, or you can restructure your schedule around it. Waiting is friction for people who cannot control their calendars. If you are working a job that can be automated, waiting is not friction, it is punishment. You cannot wait because you need income today, not someday. You cannot wait because your rent clock is not negotiable. Your groceries do not respect your optimism. Now layer in 2026 reality. AI is not just replacing jobs in some vague future tense. It is shrinking mid-level work right now. It is automating paperwork, scheduling, customer support, basic coding tasks, and even portions of marketing analysis. Many people were told to learn to code back in the early 2020s. The joke is that AI learned how to code too, and it learned how to code faster than most humans can learn it. So while you are standing in the line of your life, trying to earn your place, the system quietly changes the queue rules. It replaces human labor with software. It replaces skill with prompt engineering. It replaces employment stability with contract work. And then it tells you that the new reality is fair because you still technically have a chance to apply. Chance is not fairness. Chance is a marketing term. And it gets worse because the queue logic spreads into everything. Healthcare, education, housing, even healthcare insurance feels like a maze designed to punish people for being sick at the wrong time. Now here is where your anger should focus. This is not random cruelty, this is incentive alignment. When you let money buy priority, you create two classes of time, a class that invests and a class that waits. Then you act surprised when the class that invests keeps pulling ahead. So you tell yourself a comforting story. You tell yourself that fairness will eventually catch up. You tell yourself that if you are patient, if you are moral, if you do everything right, the line will treat you kindly. But the line is not a line, it is a funnel. And the funnel is shaped to favor capital. In 2026, the top 1% does not just earn more, they control more. They buy assets that generate income even when they are not working, and they borrow against those assets at interest rates that regular people rarely ever see. While you are trying to stretch your paycheck, they are using financial engineering to stretch their advantages. You can see the disconnect in the data. Real wages struggle to keep up with essentials in many places, while asset prices rise. In the same period, wealth concentration accelerates. That disconnect is not a coincidence. It is the outcome of a system that treats ownership as a form of citizenship. And now we move to the second lie, the one that disguises itself as morality. People say money cannot buy love, money cannot buy health, money cannot buy happiness, and sure, those things are not guaranteed by dollars. But the way people say it matters, because when someone says that while struggling, what are they doing? They are building a narrative that makes their situation feel less humiliating. They are turning envy into philosophy. They are turning resentment into religion. If money could buy those things, they would have to admit a painful truth, that their lack of money might mean the system did not treat them as if they mattered, that their suffering might not be a lesson, it might be the design. So instead, they choose a safer conclusion. Money is the root of evil. That way, they do not have to learn the mechanisms. They do not have to admit the rules were biased. They do not have to confront the fact that doing your best is not the same as getting results in a market built to reward capital and punish labor. Here is a micro story to make it real. Picture a 32-year-old nurse named David. He works the same shift every week. He does overtime when he can. He watches videos about personal finance, mostly advice that sounds like discipline. Save more, cut spending, build an emergency fund. He tries, he really tries. Then a new AI scheduling system rolls out at his hospital. It optimizes staffing faster than any human manager. It reduces wasted labor hours. It improves efficiency. It also shifts which departments get coverage. And because of that, David's overtime opportunity disappears. Not because the hospital suddenly loves fairness, because it loves margins. Now David's emergency fund grows slower. His paycheck buys less. His city's housing prices keep rising faster than his salary. He feels trapped. When he talks to friends, someone tells him the comforting line, "Money cannot buy health, can it? Money cannot buy happiness, can it?" As if the problem is that he lacks gratitude. As if the problem is his attitude. David nods, because nodding is easier than screaming. But deep down, he knows something else. He knows that when he was younger, rent was lower. When he was a kid, he could move out sooner. When he was younger, grocery prices did not climb as fast as they have since inflation started eating the baseline. Money might not buy love, but money buys the stability that makes love possible to sustain. Money buys the ability to choose where you live and whether you can afford time off. Money buys access to healthcare options, appointments, and treatments. Money buys the difference between "I will be fine" and "I will break." And here is the cold truth. The rich do not need to convince themselves that money is evil. They need to convince themselves that money is useful, and the system agrees. The third lie is about ethics, and it is uglier because it comes with a smile. People love morality stories. They love the idea that good people are good because they resist temptation. But the truth is that money behaves like a solvent. It dissolves boundaries, not by itself, but by changing what actions are profitable. When you make a thing tradable, you make it scalable. When you make it scalable, you attract incentives. When you attract incentives, you attract people willing to do what they would not do if it cost too much. Now let me bring you a concrete example that illustrates how ethics can be distorted when cash enters the room. In parts of India, surrogacy markets exist. The ethical debate has raged for years, especially around exploitation. A journalist reportedly investigated a family where the husband earned around $40 a month. They lived in a deteriorating home with multiple people inside. The amount someone could earn through surrogacy in certain arrangements could be around $8,000 for a single pregnancy. That is the equivalent of many years of the household income. So when you look at that situation from inside the family, what do you expect? You expect optimism, not shame. You expect people to see it as a chance to escape poverty. You expect family members to support it because survival is not a philosophy seminar. Survival is a deadline. And yet, outside the household, people judge. They judge the woman for participating. They judge the system for enabling. They judge morality. The point is not to pretend every arrangement is the same. The point is to understand what money does. It turns desperate choices into rational options. It makes certain actions look like progress, and it invites a market logic to reshape ethics. The book this idea echoes argues that money can corrode moral standards. But you need to see the mechanism. It is not that money creates evil out of thin air. It is that money changes incentives. It changes who gains power. It changes which risks are worth taking. It changes what people can afford to refuse. And in 2026, incentives are being rewritten again, this time by technology. AI can produce persuasive text, targeted ads, and manipulation at scale. Social media already sells the fantasy of passive income. In practice, most people who chase content monetization earn almost nothing. They spend hours creating, and then the platform takes its cut and the algorithm decides whether anyone sees them. Many creators do not even earn enough to cover their costs. But the fantasy is powerful because it offers moral insulation. If you fail, you can blame the algorithm, not the economics. You can blame yourself as the reason you are not free, not the system. Now replace algorithm with market incentives. The story stays the same. The mechanism stays the same. And this is why the money is evil narrative is so convenient. It lets you avoid the harder question: who benefits from the status quo? Because if money is evil, then nobody needs to study incentives. Nobody needs to understand policy. Nobody needs to analyze how wealth concentrates. Nobody needs to ask why housing has detached from wages, why insurance markets in some regions are collapsing under climate risk, why people are being pushed into longer working lives, and why retirement systems feel like a trap. Now we get to the fourth lie, and it is the one that will make you uncomfortable because it sounds reasonable. Markets are not perfect. People say, yes, markets can fail. But markets can also solve things. Markets can improve efficiency. Markets can move goods and services. True. But markets fail in predictable ways. And when markets fail, people panic and pretend the solution is morality instead of structure. Let's use an example that is not about money as romance or money as freedom, but money as a compensation mechanism. There was a case discussed in economic research related to storing nuclear waste in a small Swiss village. Researchers surveyed residents to gauge willingness to accept it. Initially, about 51% reportedly said they would accept the waste storage. Then the government offered cash compensation. After that offer, support dropped to about 25%. So the question becomes, what happened? At first, residents may have considered civic responsibility. They might have accepted a risk because the waste could not simply vanish and the location is local. But when money entered the equation, the perception changed. Suddenly, it looked like they were being asked to trade safety for cash. People do not always want to feel like a price tag. They want dignity. They want agency. They want to believe decisions reflect responsibility, not bribery. So cash can fail to solve a problem even when it is offered. Not because money cannot buy outcomes, but because money can buy outcomes while damaging social trust and moral legitimacy. Now apply this to modern finance. When you think about buyouts, regulatory settlements, and political influence, what you are really seeing is the same problem. Money can move decisions. But money can also poison legitimacy. It can turn governance into a transaction. And once legitimacy collapses, the system becomes unstable. In 2026, legitimacy is fraying everywhere. People distrust institutions because the outcomes do not match the promises. Inflation might fall on official measures while consumers still feel poorer because essentials rise faster than salaries. Interest rate decisions might stabilize certain markets while ordinary households remain squeezed by debt and rent. Pension assumptions might look fine on spreadsheets while real retirees face shortened benefits or delayed retirement ages. And while legitimacy collapses, wealth concentration continues. The top 1% owns more of the wealth than before. That is not a vibes-based opinion. That is the direction of the numbers. So what do people do? They search for a new comfort phrase, a new moral shield. Sometimes it is money can't buy happiness. Sometimes it is the rich are evil. Sometimes it is all rigged, which becomes a passive excuse instead of a call to understand incentives. But the book argument and the real-world mechanism behind it points towards something else. The system is not broken because money exists. The system is broken because of how money interacts with power, time, and information. Now here is where we tie it directly to the 2026 realities you are living through. AI is removing middle-class jobs faster than most people predicted because the tasks being automated are not abstract. They are routine, scheduling, drafting, sorting, basic analysis. Even parts of coding and design are being accelerated by tools that can generate drafts in seconds. So who wins? People who already own capital and can fund adoption. People who already have teams. People who already have access to data and computing power. People who can buy time and reduce uncertainty. If you are labor without leverage, you become the queue. Housing is the second reality. In many Western markets, housing prices did not just rise, they detached. Wage growth could not match price growth. That created a generation of perpetual renters. It also created a mental trap. People believe they must buy a home eventually, so they keep stretching, borrowing, hoping the future will pay for the present. Meanwhile, interest rates and insurance costs keep reshaping affordability. So money is not buying happiness. Money is buying survival space. And the people with the space are the ones who can choose. Inflation is the third reality. Officially, inflation has sometimes come down from peaks, but purchasing power does not always bounce back neatly. If your salary stagnates and essentials rise, you feel the damage for years. Your emergency fund becomes thinner, your options shrink, your stress becomes normal. The fourth reality is that retirement is being pushed out. Social Security trust fund concerns, pension underfunding in certain regions, and aging demographics are not hypothetical. People are working longer, sometimes because they want to, often because they cannot afford not to. The window for financial freedom keeps moving away. The fifth reality is global debt. We are living in a world where total global debt exceeds $300 trillion. That level of indebtedness means interest costs matter and policy becomes constrained. When governments cannot easily inflate away the burden without consequences, they choose other mechanisms. Sometimes those mechanisms show up as austerity, sometimes as asset price support, sometimes as restructuring that shifts pain downward. And the sixth reality is climate-driven disruption. When insurance markets collapse in high-risk areas, households face sudden affordability shocks. They do not get a gentle transition. They get a renewal premium that is impossible. They get forced relocation. They get stress that never ends. So if you are told money cannot buy health, love, and happiness, you need to ask a brutal question. What exactly is money doing in your life right now? For many people, money is buying less time to recover from shocks. Money is buying less margin. Money is buying less safety. Money is buying fewer options. And that is not philosophy. That is survival economics. Now we reach the darker understanding, the part that connects to the central message of the original idea, but flips it into the 2026 context. You are not wrong to want fairness, but you are using fairness as a way to avoid strategy. You keep thinking the moral universe will correct itself. The market universe does not correct itself. It rewards those who can play the game. The book-style argument says